part 2 in an unknown 2-part series on the truth about Fort Collins, specifically to talking about diversity. I'm married to a Black woman. Shocker, you know. This is my wife, Janae, and my name is Patrick Soukup with Soukup Real Estate Services here in Fort Collins, Colorado. And if you're new to the channel, we talk to you about everything living, eating, sleeping, working here in Fort Collins. And if at the end of the video you've enjoyed the content, give it a thumbs up, comment, and engage. And as much as we like making these real estate videos for YouTube, we like working with buyers, sellers, investors for all the real estate needs, everything here in Fort Collins. So give me a call, text, you name it. I've got your back when it comes to moving to Fort Collins, Colorado. And without any further delay, let's jump into part number 2 about living, or the truth of Fort Collins, considering diversity. After talking to my wife last video, she at the end of the video had some questions for me. So I thought it would be kind of fun to make a second part from my perspective. So I'll let Janae kind of take it and ask me some of the questions that were on her mind.
Yeah, so he asked me a ton of questions on what it was like being a Black woman in Fort Collins, in this community, how I felt, things I liked and disliked about it. And it made me curious about, you know, what it was like from his perspective being married to a Black woman. You know, he's the white guy who lives here, born and raised, familiar with the community. This is home to him. He doesn't know anything other than this. And he decides to marry a Black woman. And so I kind of want to know what that's like for you, you know, especially in your profession, meeting lots of people. What's it like when you go and you meet people, you network, you have meetings, those sorts of things, and they see me and our children, our 2 kids. What's that like for you?
Yeah, so I obviously grew up in Fort Collins, born and raised here, and went to school. And yeah, there was maybe a few different folks in my grades at different, you know, years that had, you know, different backgrounds, different religions, different races, but majority of people were white. And I would say the majority of my, you know, girlfriends growing up were white. And so getting into CSU and being on the track team, there was a higher, you know, population of Black people in the sports department of CSU. But, you know, really from the get-go, I was a freshman and she was a 5th-year senior, and I didn't think for one second I had a chance. One, not only was I a freshman, I was also, you know, pretty like average on the track team, and she was an all-star, you know, all-American, very, very talented, gifted, hardworking athlete. And I was very attracted to her from the get-go, but never in, you know, my wildest dreams did I think there was the slightest chance of, you know, getting with her. But we became friends and started hanging out more and more. Told my mom that I had a, you know, massive crush on this girl at our track meet, and I pointed her out and didn't think anything about it, didn't think anything of it. Didn't think I had a chance, but, you know, as we progressed and we started to date and have feelings for each other, I think I remember mostly you were concerned about meeting specifically my dad. My mom, you met actually she met my uncle first at a ranch, who's the oldest of the brothers, or sorry, second oldest of the brothers. And just didn't think much of it. I don't know if it was because I was 19 years old and young, dumb, didn't care, and just was like head over heels in love, but just didn't think anything of it. And You met my uncle. My uncle was very welcoming on his ranch, and we had an amazing weekend together. And from there, you accidentally kind of ran into my dad and you were terrified. But obviously I just didn't think anything of it. I think there was, again, in the last video I talked about ignorantly kind. Maybe I was ignorantly in love and not really understanding that, hey, you're in a relationship with a person of a different race and background. People might look at that differently. I never really thought about it like that. And
I helped him think about it that way because I know, you know, older generations, older men, women who, you know, their son or their daughter is dating someone outside of their, you know, their race. It can be an issue. And so I had to point it out to him several times, like, do they know I'm a black woman? Do they know I'm a black woman? And he said, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. But, you know, knowing, you know, myself, knowing how, you know, it can be approached and how it can be an awful situation, and tried to educate him as much as possible so that he could try to understand how it could be a bad situation. But luckily it wasn't.
Yeah, and I don't know, a part of your question was like, how do I handle it and deal with it? And how do I expect people to handle and deal with it? I don't have near as much of a temper or anger issue as I used to. Obviously it's still there. And, you know, I boxed, I fought when I was younger, and I don't think I would take very kindly to it of somebody saying or doing something that was outwardly prejudiced or against our relationship. And fortunately, I never have had it explicitly told to me, whether that's people that might have a certain feeling about something. I do remember my grandmother when she was passing away, and you know, said because their family was, you know, there was prejudice in her family, and she pulled me in, and it was right when we were first starting to get very serious. I had her over to my grandparents' house before her health issues started going downhill, but she pulled me in and said, I don't care what anyone thinks. If you love her, you know, move forward with it. And she was my godmother. I was named after her. And when she said that, I think it just instilled even more confidence in me and faith that, like, I really didn't give a shit what my family thought, if there was any emotions or feelings that they might have that they weren't outwardly expressing to me. So moving forward, it was just, this is Patrick's, you know, fiance. We got engaged pretty young and got very serious pretty young. And fortunately, I never had any experience from any of my family members, at least, you know, specifically directed towards me, of any racism or prejudicial thoughts. So I'm pretty fortunate on that. And as far as like the business side of things go, I'm very fortunate that we've done well, that I'm confident in my abilities. And if there are anybody that has any type of issues with it, one, they might not work with me, and maybe maybe I've been ghosted by a client here or there, and maybe that's the reason. I don't know. Like, maybe they say one thing or just don't want to work with me for another reason. It hasn't happened very often, but that could be. I guess I never really even thought about it. That could be a reason, is something like that. But I'm also pretty picky, I guess you'd say, of people that I work with, and I wouldn't take very kindly, and I wouldn't work with somebody who made any type of comments that weren't, or that were racist. I wouldn't stand for it.
Have you noticed that people may stare more often, or, you know, have a long lingering look at, you know, your black wife who walks in? Or, I mean, they may not be prejudiced or racist or have any issues at all, but they notice, and you notice them noticing. Have you had any of those issues?
I would say Janae's biggest frustration with me at times is kind of my obliviousness to potentially people doing that. And I would say maybe that's happening, but honestly, I just haven't ever paid attention to it, of man, they looked for a long time. They could be looking because we're a white and black couple. And so I would say that's probably one of my downfalls, is because I know that's one thing that you've seen maybe a time or two and have had experience with, maybe a comment that somebody's made that you've got pretty frustrated at me with, because I give people the benefit of the doubt 10 times over, and you've made it very clear to me that no, this wasn't just a comment in regards to, question. It was a comment directed towards my ethnicity, and it was a racist comment. And I've come to learn that especially Janae, she doesn't go out and she doesn't look for people that are trying to be racist. She doesn't seek and take one offhand comment and say that was racist. It needs to be pretty outward and pretty explicit for Janae to take consideration of it being racist. Not to say that maybe some of those offhand comments weren't racist, but it's not that she is out there looking for it. And I would say that's probably one thing that I'm fortunately oblivious to, because I guess ignorance is bliss on some things, and I don't really go around looking for it. And I have never experienced anybody saying anything weird besides, honestly, online and having this YouTube channel. And when I hear it, or heard it, or read it, I should say, definitely, got me pretty frustrated. So fortunately, I'm a little bit oblivious to it and don't notice it. And if I do notice it, I don't think that it's because we're white and black.
So what about kind of our discussion before having children, and how, what did you think, our children would look like? How did you think that would impact our lives? What do you think of our kids?
Yeah, so as I said in part one, I didn't really ever envision getting married or having kids or anything like that. I just thought it would happen one day, and I just assumed they'd be white. And so it was kind of one of those things where it was after I think Janae got pregnant that I realized, well, they're definitely not going to be white. They're going to be half white, half black. And I didn't think anything about it. I was curious, and I'm curious when she's had our babies, like, what are they going to look like? And it's been kind of exciting. I mean, I'm sure every parent has that excitement of, what are they going to look like? Is it going to be brown hair, red hair, blue eyes, brown eyes? Ours is, we've had two babies that are pretty light skinned.
They ask me if they're my children because they are so light. They're, just a touch darker than, Patrick here. And I always told him before having our kids that, he might want to get used to the idea of people asking him if they're his children, or getting used to the idea of a little boy or girl asking him why, they look different from him. But it's going to be me that is doing, that they're asking those questions to, because they look so much lighter than me.
Yeah, when they came out, in everyone's hearts, it's an amazing feeling being a dad, because when they came out, they just were my baby, right? I didn't think anything besides they were my baby, not what color they were, what anything are they. All I cared about was they're healthy, and that's my baby. And then they've grown, and they're continuing to grow, and you fall in love with them so much that I'm sure even if they looked like a gremlin, you'd think they were beautiful. You think they were gorgeous. We get comments all the time about how beautiful our kids are, and I couldn't agree more. But when I thought about the idea of raising them in Fort Collins, I was very comfortable with the idea that even if they were much darker than they are now, I was confident that us as parents could help educate them if there was a situation, because kids are mean and say stupid shit, and coming home and being able to correct it and educate, and hopefully from both of our backgrounds and experiences, help them through potentially difficult and hard situations. So I still feel that way, but I also feel like, you know, our kids would never talk back to me, and you know, my 3-year-old called me a brat today. So you know, you take that for what it is. And so I'm sure when these experiences happen, they will be very difficult. And hopefully between the two of us, having a strong foundation, we'll be able to help them through potentially difficult situations, which I'm sure will happen. You know, I would say definitely my perspective is open and, like I said, a little bit oblivious to the potential racism that, because I just never really experienced it growing up, and so I don't know what it could be like. And I think maybe if I came from a different community with, you know, maybe a bigger metropolitan, it would be a little bit more worrisome, and maybe you'd be a little bit more on edge for if things were to happen, because, you know, we do live in a world that unfortunately there's racism's alive and well. And so I would say that's definitely one thing. I just haven't experienced a ton of it, or I've seen a lot of it. So I'm not on edge, or I'm not on defense with it. I would be very protective and very upfront and confront whoever, you know, thought that that was a good idea to say or do anything. But my initial observation of people in Fort Collins or Northern Colorado is that they're kind and going to be open and loving to me and my family and my kids. And they'll have to prove me wrong for that to, you know, for me to make a big aggressive move. But I think maybe coming from a different background or community that maybe there's a stronger presence of racism coming into Fort Collins, that would be your initial like gut reaction, would be, oh man, you know, they want to touch my hair, like F that person. And maybe it's just some old lady who thinks your hair is beautiful and is talking to you and doesn't realize that's not okay. And because she just hasn't been around maybe many Black people in Fort Collins, because she's been here since the 60s when maybe there was 95% white people. I'm not sure what the percentages were way back when, but that would definitely be my perspective. Is I have a lack of perspective when it comes to racism in bigger cities and areas or different communities. That just doesn't necessarily happen, at least from my vision here in Fort Collins, too much.
And I would just encourage people, I mean, no matter what you are, race-wise, ethnicity-wise, and religion, anything like that, Fort Collins is just a good community, a good city. And so come on out, to be a part of this community. I mean, the more we do have of diversity, the better off we're going to be. And the more we can, you know, educate others wherever it needs to be done, we can do that too. And it just will make our community better.
Yeah, I agree. And also it's, you know, I'm working with some folks coming from out of Chicago, and we were texting the other day, and he's going to get involved with a soccer group that he's already built some relationships here in Fort Collins for a soccer group. And I've suggested, and not that she has to do it, but because one of the things that she definitely does want is, you know, relationships with people of similar ethnicity, background, whatever, to, you know, form a group, to build a community. But because she's not going to find it walking out her front door, or, you know, too much just to bump into people at the grocery store, so she'll have to create something. But the good thing is, generally speaking, we can find those communities, whether it's those sword playing, whatever they are at the parks, you know, or whatever. We can connect with people in so many different ways. And so even though there is a smaller population of you know, Black, brown, whatever, they are here, and I'm sure feeling similar ways. So I, you know, will be very curious to see how Fort Collins grows in the future with a larger population being mixed or of a different background, race, religion. So it's exciting times, and excited where Fort Collins is going and growing. And hopefully anyone who does come here, you know, brings positivity and a willingness and openness to be a part of this community. So, Well, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Patrick Soukup with Soukup Real Estate Services here in Fort Collins. And as much as I like making these real estate videos for YouTube, and we like more working with buyers, sellers, and investors for all their real estate needs. So give me a call, text, email if you're considering moving or relocating to Fort Collins. Thanks for watching.